Okay. All right. Good morning and welcome to BELTRAIDE's panel under the theme Hemp on the Horizon. Today, we have some very interesting panelists joining us in this virtual plenary that's being held as a part of our Make We Talk Business web series show. And so today we will be joined and covering several topics on the industrial hemp industry, which is an emerging industry in Belize's agribusiness and agriculture sector. So first, we will be learning more about the industrial hemp permitting process from Mr. Hernan Zetina, who is the Deputy Technical Director of Plant Health at the Belize Agricultural Health Authority. And then we move into the hemp trade opportunities and market access by Ms. Tricia Gideon, who is the trade economist for the CARICOM and CSME unit at the Directorate General for Foreign Trade. Our next panelist is Mr. William Grimshaw, who is the owner and managing director for the Tropican Foods Limited, which is one of the hemp private sector enterprises currently in Belize. Welcome. And then we also will be hearing from Mrs. Fiona Coleman Espejo, who is the manager for Belize Invest Aftercare, which will be providing us with an investment incentive overview. So my name is Mr. Hiro Balani. I am the manager for Belize Investment Generation, and I will be your moderator for today. So thank you to all of our panelists for joining us in this virtual plenary under the theme of Hemp on the Horizon. So today we will begin with the industrial hemp permitting process by the Belize Agricultural Health Authority. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Hernan Zetina. Mr. Zetina, can you hear us?
Yes, Hiro.
Okay, excellent. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Zetina. So first, I'd like to ask a few questions about the hemp permitting process, and if you can share with our viewers some of what that process entails. So my first question is, where can potential investors interested in industrial hemp find the relevant forms needed to apply for the varying licenses?
Okay, once again, thanks for having me as a panelist, Hiro. Interested investors can find all the forms that they need to apply to become a hemp producer on the BAHA website. The website is www.baha.org.bz. All the forms are there, and there's also a guidance document by the name of Industrial Hemp Application Procedures, and this guides the investors or the applicant in the process of going about doing the application. It's quite easy. All the forms are there. The only thing that we ask is that the applications are submitted to BAHA in a physical form. No emails are allowed, so you have to fill out the form and deposit it at BAHA, and it has to be done in 7 copies.
Okay. So it's all hard copy and 7 copies. Okay.
Right.
Excellent. And Mr. Zetina, if I may ask, how long does it approximately take to get a license to, let's say, if an investor is interested to cultivate hemp, to process hemp, or to transport hemp along with its byproducts in Belize?
Yeah, it all depends. I would say on an average, it takes about 2 months. The process for approval is that there's a hemp oversight committee made up of 5 persons from BAHA, from the Ministry of Health, from the police department, and 2 other agencies. I don't recall the other 2 agencies at this time, but it's 5 persons who make up the hemp oversight committee. So what they do is they meet as often as they can, at least once a month. They look at the applicants and they do a first vetting. Once they are satisfied that the applications are complete, then they submit the applications to BAHA for us to do a site verification. So the site verification entails going out into the field to ensure that the field is where the person says it is, and that they have the size, the acreages that they say they have. So if somebody applies and say I have 50 acres, we go there and verify that they indeed have 50 acres. So once we do the site verification, that is done within 2 weeks after we get the submission from the Hemp Oversight Committee. In parallel to this, the police also does a vetting on the applicant. So the police has their own criteria of how they vet a person. I guess it's to ensure that the person hasn't been involved in any nefarious activities before. And once the police are satisfied that the applicant is bona fide, then they send a report back to BAHA saying, yes, we approve that this applicant can become a hemp producer.
Okay.
And then the Hemp Oversight Committee meets for a second time and then approves or rejects the applications.
Okay.
But on an average, I'd say about 2 months.
2 months, okay, from application to approval. Okay.
To approval, right.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Zetina. It's definitely an up-and-coming industry that we've seen quite growing interest in. And a lot of sometimes the investors would ask us as well, what are some of the fees that are involved in the process of applying for a hemp license in Belize?
Well, to the investors' delight, I would want to say that there are actually no fees involved to get the license. Okay. The only thing that the investor pays is for BAHA to do the site visit. So we go to whenever we go to the fields, we charge $1.50 per mile plus $30 per hour for the officer's time. That is the only fee that is charged to the investor. Okay. The license is absolutely free at this time.
At this time. Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing. And my last question, Mr. Zetina, is what are the industrial hemp varieties that are currently being allowed to be imported into Belize? And will BAHA consider expanding those varieties to accommodate research and development endeavors?
Yeah, right now we have 84 varieties that are approved, and these are varieties of hemp that is approved. These varieties all under the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, under a certified seed scheme. However, we are also looking at other certified schemes since we have found out that a lot of the seeds that fall under this OECD scheme are seeds that do well in temperate countries and are not doing well under our conditions. So, so while those 84 varieties, anybody can apply and bring in those 84 varieties. If somebody has a variety that is of particular interest, what we do is we'll do some research, do our due diligence, and if we think that we can manage the risk of bringing in that variety, then we by all means will go ahead and certify it.
Okay, excellent, perfect. Thank you as well for that, Mr. Zetina. And I'm sure that you mentioned that if investors have additional questions on the hemp licensing process, that they can simply visit the BAHA website and contact the Belize Agricultural Health Authority. Could you share with us again that contact information of the website?
It's www.baha.org.bz.
Okay. Excellent, perfect, and thank you so much, Mr. Zetina, for sharing with us those very insightful insights on the industry. So next we will move into talking about trade opportunities in industrial hemp. So with that, I will now call on Ms. Tricia Gideon, who is the trade economist for the CARICOM and CSME unit at the Directorate General for Foreign Trade.
Good morning, Hero.
Good morning, Tricia.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this virtual plenary today on industrial hemp. So, Tricia, my first question, I know that the Directorate General does quite a bit with trade agreements. And so we have been getting some questions about, are there any plans to include the industrial hemp industry and products in existing trade agreements?
Okay, so Belize has 5 bilateral trade agreements with CARICOM. And when we look at these trade agreements, we try to identify what goods would be relevant for the productive sector. Fortunately, if CARICOM Costa Rica, it's already included, and let me note that when I say it, we're talking about hemp seeds, we're talking about raw hemp, we're talking about hemp yarn, as well as the yarn waste. So these are included in the CARICOM Costa Rica agreement. They are also included in outside of some of the CARICOM bilaterals, such as the European Union agreement we have, the Economic Partnership Agreement. They're covered. And when I said they're covered, they're at 0%. So you can export to these markets. Let me note also CARICOM Cuba. We have them on the list of goods, those 4 product lines. And in other agreements, even though it may not be in the agreement, for example, CARICOM Colombia, we still have a rate of 0% when entering these markets. So even though we didn't place it on the list, we negotiated it, we did not negotiate it, we still have a 0 rate to enter that market. So with CARICOM Colombia, we're presently trying to expand that list to include at least true hemp and hemp seed, because that is not at 0%. So we're looking to renegotiate those lines there. But like CARICOM DR, we don't need to place that on the list. It's already 0% for all 4 of those items. In terms of the Guatemalan partial scope agreement we have in place, they already have a 0%, I believe, except for hemp yarn. Yes, so hemp yarn to enter into Guatemala is at 12%. But for hemp seeds and raw hemp and waste yarn, it's 0%. So that's something good to note. In terms of the Taiwan agreement that we're presently negotiating, that is also at 0%, so we didn't place it on the list of goods to be negotiated. Hemp yarn, however, is at 3%. For Mexico, a market that's very near to us and the possibility of having a future trade agreement with them, they are at 0%, except for hemp yarn, which is at 10%. And so hemp yarn can be a product that we can place on the list in the future with Mexico. So it's just important to know, even though you're not seeing them in the product list, they may already be at 0%. So we were thinking about hemp before the industry got started.
Okay, excellent, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing as well, Tricia, on that. So my next question is, in terms of the trade policy and trying to take advantage of the additional opportunities under trade agreements, how will the national trade policy that was developed in Belize, is it considering hemp as well?
So the national trade policy seeks to achieve 5 objectives. One of them is to improve trade performance and to diversify domestic export and domestic production and the export basket, and enhance the value chain. And so we are looking at how does that filter into our 4 pillars in that national trade policy. And 2 of those pillars is supply capacity and market access. So in terms of supply capacity, we have noted that the private sector is constrained by lack of capital, and they are very concentrated in traditional goods that we have been doing for years, such as citrus and banana. So how do we now help them to access the resources, better, efficient methods to enter into non-traditional markets? So the national trade policy doesn't necessarily zoom in to specifically hemp, but non-traditional goods in general. And how do we identify technical assistance and funding to assist the private sector to build its capacity in more efficient methods to move forward. In terms of market access, it's not about just negotiating a 0% for hemp to enter the market, but it's also about entering that market and being able to meet minimum quality and standards requirements. So we have to ensure that we can assist the private sector to help them with labeling, help them to improve the quality of their product, help them to ensure that they meet food and safety standards. So in coordinating with other entities. So it is a part of our mandate to assist in these areas to fulfill our trade policy.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that, Tricia. And I think with my final question, it's a two-pronged question. So we understand that there's quite a bit of value-added products that can be derived from hemp, and it's an emerging industry now in Belize. So in terms of regional policies that are in place for it, and if the private sector would want to include their hemp value-added products into trade agreements, what would that process look like, and how would they go about engaging the DGFT or the Directorate General to share which products are being produced in Belize for that.
In terms of what the private sector would like to do, how to export to the region?
Yes, to export and to include into trade agreements.
So if I understand correctly, if the private sector would like, let's say they come up with a product beyond the 4 product lines that I've identified before, what happens, for example, we're currently negotiating CARICOM-Colombia trade agreement. We would contact them, ask them about what they're currently producing, what are some of the challenges they're encountering, and what products they would like to start exporting. And we would see if they have already exported and look at the trends, and to also look at that market to see if they're importing that product from anywhere else, how much they're importing, what is if they protect that market, and what's their interest as well. And then we would put it on the list of items to be negotiated with that country. So with every trade agreement, it's not exhaustive. It's something that we can continuously renegotiate to ensure that everybody is benefiting from the agreement.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. Tricia, thank you for that. And so if the private sector would want to contact the Directorate General for Foreign Trade, what would be the best way for them to reach you or your office?
Well, the best way is to visit our website, so www.dgft.gov.bz, or to email us at foreigntrade@btl.net. And you can call us as well at our office at 822-2832.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Tricia. And so with that, now we move into getting a little bit more on the private sector perspective. So I will now invite Mr. William Grimshaw, who is the owner and managing director for Tropican Foods Limited, as our next panelist. William?
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Hero.
Okay, good to have you. And so I know we recently visited your farm, which is also being featured in this episode, and you had shared a little bit with us. But we also wanted to understand a little bit more, William, on your experience in establishing a hemp farm in Belize and the business model about contract farming. So you mentioned that you're seeking to subcontract farmers to grow hemp. Can you speak a little bit more about this business model?
Okay. For us, the idea is to get to the market quickly and efficiently. And in our minds, the best approach would be to contract farmers. We provide the seeds. The farmer, at the end of the day, provides the product. We process it, value add it, and we think this model allows us to focus more on the market and on the supply chain itself, as opposed to having to do everything ourselves. So we kind of feel that contract farming is the best approach, and it's a win-win situation because farmers have a good rotation crop, higher market value crop in the rotation. The processor can get to full capacity faster while keeping more foreign exchange in the country.
Thank you for sharing that model on contract farming with us, William. And so our next question is, if a farmer would want to participate in the industrial hemp value chain that you're looking to create in Belize, what would you ask them to do in terms of preparing their land to grow industrial hemp?
I believe that farmers should invest more time rather than money. At the end of the day, by exploring new or old methods, we found that some of the older methods seem to give better results. And there's even newer technology that's probably a year or two old here in the country that we can utilize to maximize yields and create a better rotation. And also, I believe focusing on soil health and the systems required to maintain a good soil health is really important. Expanding on the network of service providers that we already have in the country, exploring new inputs such as organic inputs, looking at new seeding technology or harvesting technology. And we already have the infrastructure here. So it's just a matter of farmers taking the time and exploring outside of the comfort zone. I think will really be a big aspect of it.
Okay, excellent. So in terms of your experience as a private sector investor in this industry, and again, as we've been discussing in this virtual plenary, that it is an emerging industry, what are some likely scenarios to expect when someone is starting to invest in industrial hemp? So in terms of, like you mentioned, soil type, any climatic conditions, any irrigation or harvesting recommendations that you would have?
Um, there are a range of scenarios that I think will be problematic in regards to if there's an attempt to grow during the dry season. Irrigation won't be sufficient because the crop requires around 30 inches of water for its lifetime. And we were looking at some other flood type irrigation systems, and we don't feel very confident in those methodologies. And so we think that if anyone's looking to invest in the hemp, you have to look at 3 crops a year at maximum, and that's really pushing it. I also think that there will be likely scenarios that there will be some lack of farmer confidence or investor confidence, just simply because it's a new industry and there's so many different aspects that can be exploited from hemp. And in order to be successful, I think we have to really pay attention to the market and where it's going, and farmers have to be conscientious of that as well.
Okay. Now, in terms of the value-added products and your processing facility, you do see ultimately an opportunity that it can be an industry that we can create many value-added products in the value chain in Belize, correct?
Correct. I think, in my personal opinion, I think there will be a lot of opportunity to invest in some of the base products, value adding from the base products. There's a lot of discussion about I think there being 50,000 applications for hemp, and every step of the way of processing, from harvesting all the way to processing, there's something that's left behind that can be used. I mean, for example, when you're pressing the oil, you're left with a seed cake that could either be used for chicken feed, cattle feed, or you can go a much step further and refine it down to a high protein supplement. And even so, like, for example, when harvesting, a lot of the fiber can be processed. The stalks, if you're only harvesting the grain, the stalks themselves can then be pulverized and used for organic and I'm looking for the term, sorry, non-chemical based animal bedding. Okay. And a lot of the time, chicken manure can be a real issue when you're trying to apply it to the feed. There's an additional process that you have to go through. But since hemp hurd or hemp fiber is antibacterial, that helps speed up the process for turning the manure from chickens into fertilizer.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm glad that you shared that. It seems there's quite a bit of use for industrial hemp. You said over 50,000 applications. So it's definitely an exciting industry that can emerge in Belize with a lot of opportunity. So with that, William, I'll ask you our last question is, what advice would you give to those seeking to invest in hemp in regards to, let's say, banking, incorporating their company, or applying for a license in that regard?
Banking, it's difficult to say because there's a lot of technical issues that still need to be hashed out, I think, in terms of correspondent banking. But I think those are things that will adapt over time. I think we'll start to see the benefits of changing some of the way we do things when it comes to our correspondent banking and the restrictions that these correspondent banks have on certain industries. And I believe that will change as we slowly mature and develop newer industries and expand on hemp as a whole.
Okay. And in terms of company incorporation and the licensing process, any advice to someone that would want to invest in industry?
I think, as Mr. Hernan Zetina had mentioned earlier in regards to the procedures, I think it'd be really important to follow the procedures to a T. And before investing and going through the entire process of segregating your land, cleaning your land, and preparing it, I would think it'd be best to look at the requirements first to make sure that your land meets the requirements for the licensing procedure. And for company registry, I think, whosoever would like to register their company should go ahead and do so. I think there's a lot of potential for additional companies to come in and process a lot of the byproducts that we're looking at leaving behind.
Definitely, definitely, exactly. And I think there's quite a bit of entrepreneurial opportunity that can come from this. But thank you so much, William, for sharing the private sector perspective with us this morning. And now what we will do is now move
Thank
over
you,
to
Hero.
our final panelist. Thank you as well, William. So our last panelist for today is Ms. Fiona Coleman Espejo, who is the manager of Belize Invest Aftercare. So Ms. Fiona, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Hero, and good morning to our esteemed guests once again.
Good morning, good morning. So today we'll be speaking a little bit more since we've had an overview of the process in applying for a license. We've talked about the potential for hemp in trade, and we've looked at some of the private sector perspective. We now want to know if someone would want to apply for an investment incentive, what incentives are available. So Mrs. Fiona, if you can share with us what development concession programs currently exist for industrial hemp at BELTRAIDE.
Currently, BELTRAIDE administers 3 key government incentives, which include the Fiscal Incentive Program, the Designated Processing Areas Program, and the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Enhancement Program.
Okay, excellent. And so what are the main differences between the Fiscal Incentive Program and the Designated Processing Area Program for someone interested in industrial hemp farming and processing?
Right. So the Fiscal Incentive Program encourages both new and existing investment across the key priority sectors, which include, of course, tourism and leisure, agriculture and agro-processing, fisheries and aquaculture, offshore outsourcing services. We have sustainable energy and light manufacturing and logistics through the granting of customs import duty exemptions and revenue replacement duty for up to 15 years on eligible items.
Excellent.
Whereas the Designated Processing Area Program supports investments that engage in international trade and value addition, including technological transfer, generation of employment, and production according to the standards of the intended market. Of course, it includes import duty and tax exemptions, along with exemptions on property and land tax on the designated area for up to 10 years.
Okay, so it seems that the designated processing area offers a bit more benefits than the fiscal incentive and a longer time frame. Is that correct?
Right, yes.
Okay, so in terms of if someone were to want to invest in an agricultural venture, which program would it be best to start with if they're doing an industrial hemp farm?
Right, excellent question. Of course, we recommend the Fiscal Incentive Program ideally to support an agricultural venture, specifically for a company that's seeking duty exemption on items, for example, your building materials and supplies, your fixtures and fitting, office equipment and appliances, your plant machinery and equipment, most importantly, your agricultural machinery and supplies and specialized tools.
Okay, so for a farming venture, you would recommend that the fiscal incentive be used. Okay, and if they were to do some processing into additional value-added products for exports, then which would you recommend?
As mentioned, the designated processing area would be ideal when it comes to that value addition and as I mentioned, transfer of technology in terms of employment generation and seeking to export in a specific intended market.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. And if you could share with us briefly, Mrs. Coleman, while we have you, is what is the process like to apply for both either the fiscal incentive program or the designated processing area program for an industrial hemp investor that is interested?
Okay, so upon receipt of our complete business plan in accordance with the standing fiscal incentive and designated processing area guidelines, BELTRAIDE forwards that business plan to the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Commerce, who further does a cost-benefit assessment. It is important to know that the fiscal incentive program application is submitted to Cabinet for consideration, whereas the designated processing area application is submitted to the Designated Processing Area Committee for consideration. Now, for more information on any other sectors or the programs or the eligibility criteria or the application process, please contact us at the Belize Trade Investment Development Service, BELTRAIDE, at beltrade.belizeinvest.org.bz or email us at investment@belizeinvest.org.bz for more information.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Mrs. Coleman. And with that, I would just like to end off by thanking all of our esteemed panelists and guests in this virtual plenary under the theme of Hemp on the Horizon. So you've heard it here on this virtual plenary today that there exists significant opportunities in industrial hemp in Belize, and it is an industry that is definitely here, and we can look at additional opportunities in value addition, in farming, and there exists an entire ecosystem from the trade agreements to investment incentives to a full licensing process. So as mentioned by Mrs. Coleman, our team at BELTRAIDE is here to assist you. And we also have our stakeholders on the plenary today, including the Belize Agricultural Health Authority to assist in the application process for a license, as well as the Directorate General for Foreign Trade if you have any inquiries on trade. And as well, we'd like to thank the private sector for sharing your perspective. So with that, thank you to all of our esteemed panelists this morning, and we wish you all a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
All right. So I think, well, I will just ask that Thomas edits out. Well, we have our marketing team that's going to edit. But that was just the scripted and the question, the Q&A. So what we'll be doing, I think we kept on time. We were within 30 minutes, so this is great. And what we'll just do is share a copy of the video as well once it airs. So the episode will be airing at the end of the month, July 31st, right? So if there's anything else that you'd like to share or add, let us know. And I just want to say again, personally, thanks to everyone. And I know it was quite quick, but I think we went through it well and it was very engaging. So thank you all. Thanks, Mrs. Atina. Thanks, William. Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Hero.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right.
Thank you.
Take
You're
care,
everybody.
welcome. Bye.
Have a good day.
Just one question before we
Yes,
leave.
sure. And
When you guys produce the video, can we put a link on our website so that anybody who goes to our website can also see the video?
Right. Yes, we can. What we'll do is we can share a copy of it once it's edited. I know there's a little section, I think, where we lost William for a bit. So we'll just ask our marketing team to, because I'm still recording right now, but they'll just do a quick edit of it. And what we can do is we're going to do some text overlays. So we're going to put the little, like your title, your name over it. And then we'll share that out, right? And also whenever it says like the website, like BAHA or DGFT and BELTRAIDE's website and those things, we will put like a little text overlay on the video so we can share that. Okay?
Excellent. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Atina. And then we look forward to collaborating a bit more on developing the industry. I know it's still in its infancy. So I think, William, you have done quite a bit of advocacy already. So we have to pull on your thoughts and your insights a little bit more soon.
Sure, anytime.
All right. Thank you, William. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys.